the Countryside Podcasts with Chris Skinner. Here we are at High Ash Farm. It's a beautiful morning, blue skies, and I'm in search of Chris Skinner. He said he'd be with the Woodshed Brigade here. And here he is, with a pile of logs.
Yes, I know why I did logarithms at school now, many years ago.
Boom, boom.
Oh dear. Yes, this is the old carriage store attached to High Ash farmhouse, and you can still see the depression in the brick floor I've kept because it's really lovely and antique. Old engineering bricks all laid on sand, and where they parked the gig at night. Perhaps the mistress and master of the house had been to Norwich to the theatre or somewhere locally to eat. But the gig was stored here, and next door would have been the stables and the tack room, and there was a little fireplace in the corner for anybody who was looking after the horses. So a little bit of luxury.
You used to look after your staff in those days.
This is a long, long time ago, and of course it was a horse era, and if you wanted to travel about, you had a horse and what was called a gig, a little two-wheel cart, and you had somebody get it all ready for you, the horses that had been fed. Anyway, we're past Valentine's Day, and one of the other things, apart from tea by daylight at 5 o'clock, my mum used to say, the geese who have gone particularly cranky start laying. Their first eggs are usually here, and there's a little pile of rails by the wall there that we use around the horse paddocks. And just behind them, we just walk over.
And they have got their eye on us over there, look.
Look, there's 3 eggs.
So
we're just past Valentine's Day.
Nice big eggs, those.
They're huge, aren't they? They're for my mouth, not yours. Yes, I don't actually eat goose eggs, and not many chickens' eggs either these days. That's really interesting to see. But notice it's quite cool. It's on a north-facing wall, and the geese have chosen that site in the shade really carefully, so that the warmth of the sun doesn't start to incubate them. So it's really clever site.
And clearly they're not sitting on them.
No, that's right. And when the female comes to lay an egg, she crouches over the nest. She doesn't sit down all snuggled in. She's actually an inch or 2 off the ground. She lays the egg and then comes away from it and leaves it, so it doesn't start to incubate until she's finished the clutch. Then she'll start incubating. She'll pull some feathers out of her breast, any straw or debris. She reaches around, and as she leaves the nest, she does something interesting as well. If there's any sticks or bits and pieces laying nearby, she always passes one backwards as she leaves the nest and as she walks away. So eventually you have this little pile of twigs and leaves all making it around the nest, because there's nothing there. It's actually the nest of 3 eggs at the minute. It's just on pea shingle. But she'll be there, 24, 28 days incubating through the month of March, really. And then, if we're lucky, we'll have some goslings. But they're sitting over on the lawn at the minute. They've been feeding, grazing on the grass, using that traditional method which annoys farmers when you get the wild geese, the pinkfoot up on the North Norfolk coast, coming in and grazing the wheat fields. But just want to go, before we go out on the farm and do this week's Countryside Podcast, we can introduce it here at the log pile, which is in the old stable store here.
These wonderful grooves that you've described in the floor.
Yes, depressions in the floor where over the sort of probably a century or more the gig was parked, and when you get wet weather it just perhaps sinks a tiny bit, and there's this lovely depression where the 2 carriage wheels went in. Anyway, this is my log store, and I'm about halfway through this season's logs. And they're nice and dry, and so they're easy to burn. But there's life in here. Obviously spiders and other things crawl in. But usually at this time of the year, I'm sometimes not very kind to you when you arrive at High Ash Farm, and I take you under one of the bridges where the water at the moment is knee deep, and I thought I'd spare you that indignity.
It might get washed away.
I would think so. We'd both end up at Yarmouth, I think. The stream is in full flow at the moment. We've had continuous rain here over the last fortnight, really. Anyway, we're really lucky. The water drains down into the valleys and heads off downstream to the River Tass, then to the River Yare, and out at Yarmouth or Yarmouth nearby. And so it's quite surprising, because under that bridge we always come across perhaps one or two hibernating tortoiseshell butterflies and quite a number of peacock butterflies. And I know from my experience of working in the woodland over the winter months that butterflies will choose ivy. There's 3 main species that hibernate as adults. It seems extraordinary that these hugely delicate, very, very beautiful insects hibernate in the grown-up stage, if you like. And they'll live a total of about 9 months, 6 months of which, and this will interest you, in cold weather, they hibernate. They completely go to sleep and shut down. But before they do that, they'll be feasting on plants like ivy when that comes into flower, late autumn. And the ivy actually has sugars in it, and they can convert some of those sugars into something called glycerol. And it's a little bit like antifreeze in your car radiator. But if they didn't do that and take that rich sugar solution in, they have blood in their bodies, in the thorax and the abdomen and the head, and they would actually freeze to death on cold days. So they just generally choose somewhere cool, not always completely dry, although log piles are a real favourite. Ivy close to the tree trunk, right buried in, particularly with the third species, which is brimstone butterflies. Their wings are shaped like an ivy leaf, which is just extraordinary. Little points on the wings, and they're the bright yellow ones. Sometimes you'll even see them flying in January, late January, and certainly into February. And then if it's cold weather, they go back to sleep again, snug themselves down into ivy. And that's why ivy's quite important out in the countryside. A good place for nesting birds later on in the year, but particularly for hibernating insects and some of our insectivorous birds that don't migrate away. Things like wrens will go into the ivy and look for easy prey. But in this log pile I've brought you here, it's a brilliant place for the peacock and small tortoiseshell butterflies to spend the winter.
I've just been trying to find them in this pile. My eye can't spot them.
No, because they're not meant to be seen, and it's part of the camouflage. We've got those glorious colours on the top of the wings, big peacock eyes, absolutely stunningly beautiful little creatures. But when they close their wings, it's black and it just looks like a shriveled up, dried up autumn leaf. So when I'm loading my basket to carry into my house with the logs, I pick each one up now, because the pile's a good 6 feet tall, and you can have what I call a log avalanche. When you pull the bottom one out, you have 10 dropping on top of you, and in amongst those are hibernating butterflies. And because I've turn my attention over to nature, I'm really conscious about not wanting to damage them, injure them, crush them. So if we just move over to the side, each time I find a log with a butterfly on, I pop it to one side, and they're still mobile, although they're hibernating. If the new site I've chosen for them isn't right, they'll just walk on and carry on and get through all the gaps in the logs, which is quite extraordinary. The body, obviously not very big, but the wings in comparison are huge. So if I just move this log away from the wall like that and go into the light,
Yeah.
Here you are, a perfect hibernating peacock butterfly, jet black, just looks like a dried up, dusty old leaf.
Sticking right at right angles to the log,
Yes.
with both wings straight up.
Yes, and closed very firmly together. And that is a little creature of extreme beauty and very delicate. So if I did touch it, which I'm not going to, because it will then be using the energy to activate this kind of defence mechanism, and it needs all that energy. So at the moment, it's completely and fast asleep. What a lovely way to spend 6 months of your 9 months' life. So this would have been an egg in June and July, hatched into a voraciously feeding caterpillar. So the 4 stages of the butterfly, what we call a metamorphosis, complete change in bodily appearance, if you like. So the next stage is the caterpillar, which feeds on sort of younger nettles, which are always difficult to find at that time of the year. We're getting into July and August then. Then it does something quite amazing. The little caterpillar spins a cocoon and pupates into a little bright red pupa, or sort of deepish red in some cases. And inside that, the caterpillar goes through that other sort of change from caterpillar stage to a butterfly and emerges out of the chrysalis or the pupa into this. And this is the little creature, if you have garden, feeding on the ivy late in the season, your Michaelmas daisies in sort of October, and then goes into hibernation mode at this time of the year. So right the way through from November, December, January, February, March, and then on the wing in April. This then lays its mates, lays its eggs again, and so the whole cycle takes 1 year because you just have one brood. Absolutely extraordinary and really beautiful.
Coal black, the outside of those wings, but inside the colour retained?
Yes, the colour's there. As I said, if I did touch it, it's got a kind of defence mechanism. Obviously, if you're hibernating like this, your ideal sort of quarry for a bird, a wren, if a wren came and went through the log pile, spiders, obviously. So the hazards are huge once you do this and go to sleep, become inactive when you're a living creature. Then you've got to have a little bit of defence mechanism, and peacock butterflies have that. They open their wings and expose those 2 peacock-like or owl-like eyes, I should say, on the tops of the wings, the colour as well, but at the same time the wings have tiny little scales on them, and it sounds like sort of peeling some sort of tape off a reel. And they repeat that, so you get a hissing sound, and it's really, really wonderful and really beautiful.
Well, this one hasn't been disturbed at all.
No, it's fast asleep, so I'm very tempted to yet again call our local photographer, Laura Cuffin, to take a picture of this, because it doesn't look like anything that's actually there. It just, as I said, looks... You can barely see the legs.
Wonderful serrated edge to the upper part of the wing.
That's it. That's all part of the camouflage to make it look like a dead leaf. And so that's one of the wonders of nature. You know, it just is. And I said the brimstone butterfly, the other one that hibernates as an adult together with the small tortoiseshell, the brimstone's wings actually are almost the shape and colour as well of an ivy leaf. Sort of pale greenish colour, and they're the bright sort of... And we think brimstone actually gave butterflies their name because it actually, when it's the first butterfly you see each year flying about, it's almost butter-coloured, so butterfly. So there we are.
And this peacock will be flying in a few weeks?
Yes, probably mid to late March. They'll often go out on a kind of cleansing flight. If there's anything in flower, they'll imbibe the nectar, and hopefully it will live through till then, and then lay its first batch of eggs in late April, May, June. And you'll just have that one batch of egg laying. Small tortoiseshells usually can manage to fit in 2 broods, and The other one, the brimstone butterfly, probably like this peacock, just one stab at breeding. But all three of them hibernate as adults. And it's freezing cold out there.
I was going to say, he's sensible to be in here.
Yes. So
can we do the rest of the podcast in here?
Well, I said I was going to be kind to you just at the start of this. Come on, Gudgin.
The wind is coming like a razor from the north.
It absolutely is. And unfortunately, we're going to visit a small area of woodland which faces north to south. So we're going to have to stand sideways to let the wind go past us. But first of all, we've got a small trip down to one of the many areas of woodland here at High Ash Farm. So at the moment, I'm going to pop this back safely. Each time I load my basket of logs for the evening fire, which I love to sit by, I'm so careful. There we are. Place that back so carefully to make sure it doesn't get injured or hurt. And fingers crossed it makes it through to one of those glorious spring butterflies that brighten the day up after the long winter. It's absolutely stunning. Come on, in the truck, Matthew. Courtship going on, just the one on the right.
Well, we've driven out on the farm, we're just parking up and sorting ourselves out, and what a display in front of us, Chris.
Matthew, look at that. 3 buzzards just circling and displaying. I think there's a little bit of courtship behaviour. They're stacked now, one above the other. Perfect sort of sandwich of buzzards. 20 years ago, you'd have accused me of hallucinating, I think. And
there's
now
those upturned wings at the end.
I know.
And they're quite a large bird, aren't they?
It is. A good 4-foot wingspan. What's that? 800 millimetres across, 80 centimetres. Yeah, so one's the male, and the larger ones are going to be the females, and they're just going about sort of flying upwind, which is extraordinary, in quite a strong northerly wind. They're flying into the wind, but without flapping their wings, and they're heading back to the woodland over there. The local corvids have all come up off the field. They don't like the idea of buzzards flying across the top of them, and that's just extraordinary. But they're quite early displayers. A lot of the birds of prey do, and they'll it's a little bit early in the morning for them. It's not much after 10 o'clock. Bright, full sunshine, but that's the perfect day when you can show your talents off for flying, and that's what they're doing. They're circling and just sort of enjoying. I was going to say they're on thermal currents, but there's not much heat up there where they are. They're 200-300 feet up in the air, twice the height of those tall trees, and they're just going above their nesting territory, just enjoying themselves and showing off and pairing up. But 3 of them, and usually there'll be another couple or 3 more joining them, and so you'll kind of have a turret of buzzards. That's amazing. Yes. Yeah, absolutely incredible.
You can see it really well against the blue sky we've got this morning.
Yeah, so they're quite some distance from us, but they're just hanging over the neighbouring piece of woodland, which is called Cantley Hill Plantation. 12 acres, some large mature coniferous trees in there, as well as lots of beech and oak. And they'll be using one of those for the nest sites. Yeah. Wow, yeah, they're going up now. They're 400 feet up.
Going up like in a tower?
Yes, yeah. And heading down the wind over us, a little bit of white patches under the sort of mottled plumage. Oh, one's folded his wings up and just absolutely crazy flying just for a second or two.
Is that showing off, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I did the same thing at the local disco. Yeah, my upside down dancing. That was a winner.
Thankfully, listener, Chris has retired from that sort of thing now.
Oh, you'd be surprised. Any special birthday, I'm out there on the floor, my thumbs up in the air and showing all my best moves. And that's what's happening right above us now. Absolutely amazing. Oh, and he's stooping now. The one on the right has folded his wings up and shot down towards the other 2, which are still lolling about underneath. Sort of 500-600 feet up now, tiny black dots against the blue sky. Absolutely beautiful. And yet another bit of the biodiversity that's come to the farm that wasn't here years ago.
Fabulous buzzards.
Yes, yep, and nesting soon, and we've come across them in the past when the young have just left their nest and calling sort of frantically to their parents to bring them yet more food. I know the feeling at tea time when my children were young. More... they're just stunning. Now the sky is clear and they've dropped down into the woodland, I think. What a stunning little view. We're talking about the habitat and the changes, and that's what we'll be doing. We're parked up right beside what's called Barn Wood, which is 4.5 acres, a narrow strip of woodland, 400 metres long, so it's quite significant, and we're just going to go in there, but I'm hesitant to get you outside because the wind is a bit like my cruel sense of humour sometimes. It's cutting.
And don't worry, I know my duty.
Yes, exactly. Come on, let's get out. Rat's with us, so he'll be very pleased with this arrangement. Just go in a bit more.
Rat is whizzing on, enjoying every moment of this in Barn Wood here, and you can see plenty of the blue sky. The leaves obviously are nowhere near coming out yet.
No, there's a lovely, at the northern end of Barn Wood, about 25 young oak trees. They're all bare, but the canopy at the top's just beginning to thicken up as the buds start to swell. There's very few of the trees in this area of woodland, because most of the trees are large conifer trees with ivy on them. And if you just walk this way a little bit, something happened last night which is just being repeated now. As I walk in here late evening, the trees start to fill up with birds, and because there's perhaps a dozen trees with ivy on out of the 500-600 trees that are in this belt of coniferous woodland, there's very few areas for birds to sleep. And just as we walked in, 3 or 4 blackbirds went in the tree on the other side of the woodland there, and they're feasting on the ivy berries, which have produced a really good crop this year. The warm late autumn weather particularly suited the ivy, and we've got a good crop of berries which are being feasted on by winter visiting thrushes. Some fieldfare come in, and the redwing that we caught up with last week have been roosting in this area of woodland. It's an amazing sight. About 200 or so of them come in and all creep into the ivy together and roost in there, and there's quite a noise of them actually coming in. But I think there's 3 or 4 blackbirds just in the ivy on the far side of the wood, about 50 yards from us, and they're being quite still at the moment, but they're in there feeding, so we might see them move in a minute. But it's brought to mind that one of the many questions I get is, why has High Ash Farm got such a rich biodiversity? And that's because we've got a whole range of habitats here, and one of the habitats is woodland, which we're in. But when you look at the UK, we've got a question later on about how unique the British Isles is. It's in a perfect position, sort of halfway between the equator, if you like, and the Arctic up north. But around us is the Atlantic Ocean on our western coast and the North Sea on our eastern coast, so we've got a huge influence of water around us, which helps to keep us warm, and which is why all the geese migrate down from Greenland and come down through Scotland and visit the eastern counties.
Doesn't feel very warm this morning.
In comparison to where those birds have come from, this is positively balmy, believe me. It's minus 20 over in Central Europe at the moment, and up in Greenland and Iceland, where a lot of the migratory species fly down from. So there's a huge amount of movement. So we've got the sea habitat all around the UK. Then the next one in, just as you come inshore, you've got the coastal habitat as well, and that offers a whole different range of biodiversity, which you won't find here at the farm, and that's only 20 miles away. So it starts to show you how important habitats are. In other words, the homes, the places where wildlife can feel at home, perhaps also find a good source of food at any given time of the year, and to nest and breed as well. Then you come to areas where we are here this morning. There's 13 areas of woodland at High Ash Farm. We're in one of the mature ones, and so you've got woodland as another habitat. And then the next one would be the grasslands, particularly lowland grassland. And we have a lot of grassland here at the farm, 200-300 acres of it. So a great deal of the area of the farm today is grassland, and that's a separate habitat. So in the woodland you won't find the skylarks, but out on the grassland you will, almost adjacent. So habitats can be small or large, and they also have a boundary as well. So some of the species, they're so specialist, which we don't realise until you stand back and look at all these individual habitats. Then we've got up in the northern part of the UK and right down the spine of the country, we've got the Pennines, and then you go up to the Grampians up in Scotland, and you've got a different habitat up there and different creatures. So you have ptarmigan, you have mountain hares, although we're standing quite close to overwinter wild bird seed mix, where there's perhaps a dozen European hares out there. There's another species which specialises and turns white in the winter, which is the mountain hare. Absolutely amazing.
It's just about the one thing we haven't got in Norfolk mountains. We've got virtually everything.
Well, I've got fair hills at High Ash. It's called High Ash Farm after all.
No, you can't claim a mountain.
No, I'm not even going to try. Completely different habitat, and that's the important thing. Then we've got the uplands as well, and the wetlands around the county here. We specialise in those. In Norfolk in particular, we've got broadland, so you'll have birds like grebes, herons, egrets, and all the fish species as well. So yet another, and so some of those birds will feed on others lower down the chain. So the egrets and the grebes, for instance, will feed on the small fish in the river system. So you've got yet another set of habitats there. So you can start to see this tapestry. And then the one I specialise in, I suppose, is a man-made tapestry, where I'll often take you around hedgerows, which are man-made, the arable situation as well. We get all the different plants too.
And your stables for the swallows in the
summer.
summer.
That's exactly right.
Man-made.
Yes. And of course it's absolutely perfect because it sort of dovetails in with what's going to happen on. And this is quite an important week. We're sort of getting close to March, and this is the time of the year that the swallows that were bred here at High Ash Farm last all summer and autumn, they are all gone because they need to migrate, because they're insect-eating birds, and you'd be pretty hard pushed if you're a swift or a swallow to find a good source of food with this northerly wind blowing, with the insects. You need flying insects for them, and so they migrate, they come over it. Some creatures hibernate, which we just visited the butterfly there. So you start to see how intricate and complex the environment is with all those different habitats. And I brought us here, if we walk on a little bit more, because there's some giants in the woodland here which form quite an important part for actually biodiversity. Last night I came in, and a little bit higher up the woodland there was a dead tree, only about the size of a telegraph pole, about 9-inch diameter, but quite tall. And I was standing there waiting for a rat to come out of a bramble patch, and I suddenly saw a long-tailed tit fly towards the tree and disappeared round the other side of it. And I thought, well, that's strange. Then another and another, and I walked round the tree, and I'd not seen it before, a sort of dead sycamore tree with 2 or 3 little holes in it, had been made by a woodpecker, and at the end of it there was 11 long-tailed tits went in the same hole, and just a perfect little habitat for them. Out of this cold wind, they were all tucked in together.
So they do it for shelter?
Yes, they do it for shelter as well, because they're tiny birds, little above freezing last night, about just as the sun had set. It was about 5:30 in the evening. And anyway, here's one of the giants of the woodland. It's the Scots pine, around about 150 years old. That's as big as they get in the UK, 100 feet tall, many tons of weight there. And so it had a lightning strike about 30 years ago, and it scarred all the way down this side of the trunk. And if we just walk on a little bit, you can just see where the lightning came down the tree, where the large branch is that comes off to the left, the first huge branch. About a yard beneath that, there's quite a large scar on the trunk, and that's the roosting site for some nocturnal bats that go in. So you start to have a different set of habitats, and they're unusual creatures, quite large. It's one of Britain's largest bat species.
So they'll be in there now asleep.
Yeah, they do hibernate, obviously, because again, the other way of coping with no flying insects is to become dormant in the winter months. Yes. Are you getting the feel of the temperature now, Matthew?
I am, yes.
So you can then see how important it is to have shelter, to have what we call in woodland like this. As we go further up the woodland, there's something called an understory, which are brambles and some thicket and some holly patches as well. And you can actually be out of this wind, although the wind's still blowing, and in the holly itself it provides a little micro habitat, and that's the other thing, shelter at night. Otherwise, our wildlife, when we're all tucked in, turn the handle up on the central heating a bit, and you just forget how hostile it is at midnight, 1, 2, 3, 4 in the morning when the temperature drops away. You've got this wind to further chill you, so unless you're resourceful and find a way of getting through it, then this weather is fatal for a lot of creatures who don't make provision to get them through the night. So that's why those little long-tailed tits and wrens do the same thing. They communally roost, and I hadn't seen it with long-tailed tits before. Normally they'll all snuggle up together on a branch in some thick ivy. Normally they wouldn't go down a hole like that, but this time they did, and I don't know how they all fitted in, but they certainly did. So it's a lovely sight.
Like sardines in there.
Absolutely, all packed in. So all the different sort of habitats, and there's a lovely large old oak tree up in front of us. The top blew out of it, unfortunately, about 25 years ago. I think it was probably a bit more than that. It was in 1987 when we had the big gale here, and there's some rot has started to come into the oak tree. I've left it there because standing deadwood is another one of those habitats, all the different invertebrates that can be under the bark, and that's hugely important. And the woodpeckers have started to make holes high up in the tree, right up in the what was the canopy, and so that's also another lovely nesting site, and also for the three species of woodpecker that we have here at the farm. So you can see, although this is quite a narrow band of woodland, it's quite important. So there's some fallen trees, there's one here in front of us, sycamores that have died in the drought, and that's Rat. He's obviously found a rabbit hole nearby, gets very excited about this belt of woodland. It's on sandy gravel, and so it's ideal for rabbits to be here. And again,
so is it about 50 yards wide?
Yes, it's all it is, but it's a quarter of a mile long, so it's quite a walk to get the top. It was planted out as a shooting belt, but also for timber for the farm. The farm was complete self-sufficient in the 1800s. It had its own woodworking shop, and carpenters working here and made the beams for the barns, and so it was always busy. Doors for the buildings at the farm as well, and obviously clay was dug to make the clay block barns, and then later on brick ones as the fashions changed over the sort of years that the farm has been here. So a lot of history. So wood production was important. The oaks were planted, and the Scots pine were planted as a nurse crop to make the oaks go up with nice straight trunks, which they certainly do in the centre of the woodland here.
So how does that work then, Chris? They like compete with the oaks?
Yes, they do, and that makes the oaks go up, get these long, tall, straight things. But what should have happened is perhaps close on 100 years ago, the Scots pines should have been all taken out. So it's rare you see them to get this size, and it has stifled some of the younger oak trees. There's one here with a Scots pine growing only 10 feet from it, and the Scots pine's gone up way above the top of the oak, and you can see the oaks trying to get away from it. Obviously it can't move, but the branches all are moving away from the tree, all curved over to the left. So that's one of the heliotropism. That's the response of a growing plant to light. But we're standing underneath one of the largest Scots that you can actually see in the UK.
It's really a marvellous
I think
specimen.
13 feet round the base of the trunk. So if you're into tree hugging, you've got to have nearly three goes to get round the trunk. Anyway, it's cold enough to get back in the truck and visit a few of the questions. But I just wanted to explain how important all the habitats and therefore the diverse wildlife and biodiversity that happens out even in a small country like the UK.
And prepare and develop the habitat.
Yes.
And the wildlife will arrive?
That's right, that's what happens. So you have this sequence. So there's wildlife here, things like cattle egrets on the lake. We've had otters, we've had kingfisher here in the last year or two, which we haven't had before, but it takes time. And bearing in mind these trees were planted 150 years ago, mid to late 1800s, so it shows you how long it takes to get the habitats right. So they need replacing, not necessarily all to be felled like here, but planting out new areas of woodland, and so you just start to create one of the new habitats, and you can do it with wetland. But it's time we kind of changed our way of thinking from sort of getting every inch of land into production and looking after nature, which is incredibly valuable in today's world, where everything's changing and it's very unsettled, and nature is one way of restoring the faith that humanity should have in the living things, which is what I try and do every week on this Countryside podcast. I think we should retreat as quick as we can back to that truck. This is cutting, isn't it?
Well, Norfolk is a marvellous place.
Yes.
But when the east wind or the northerly blows, like it is today, there's no defence, is there?
No, absolutely. Yeah. So we'll head back to the warm and get some proper work done later on this morning as well.
Norfolk sticks out into the sea, basically.
We do, yes. Rat, where are you? Let's hope he'll come. I'm not going to stand there and wait for him. Oh, there he is.
He's found a hole.
He's digging.
He's on the way to Australia.
Yeah,
there.
I think so. You can just see his rear end. Yes. Oh, he's working really hard, and he's nearly disappeared from sight. I think I might have to extricate him from there. He'll be in there till lunchtime. Come on.
Back in Chris's pickup now. It's somewhat warmer in here.
It's really nice. We're using it as our continued bird hide at the moment before we answer the questions. There goes one of the buzzards flying across from Cantley Hill Plantation to Fox's Grove, where the other potential nest site is. Yeah, they've spread themselves out well at High Ash Farm, at the buzzards.
Usual marvellous mix of correspondence, which Chris has been reading voraciously over the last week. Kay Ellen has sent a lovely card of an American... Now, what is that? That's a wren, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a Carolina wren. Slightly different species. Ours is called troglodytes here in the UK.
Kay Ellen says... Hello, Chris. I'm writing from small town Tip City Ohio, USA, to let you know how much I enjoy your podcast.
Oh, thank you. And Tip City is almost exactly 400 miles due west of New York, just south of Lake Erie, to give you an idea how far away. Right, I'm impressed.
I should imagine they get northerly winds occasionally.
I'm sure they do over there. I'm so impressed the High Ash Countryside podcast can reach that far. Goodness me.
Here's a letter from Tom in Wicklow. It's been maintained that we in Ireland and Great Britain have one of the best all-round climates. It's hard to justify based on the last month's weather, though. However, this will be even more the case as climate change takes hold and the rest of the world warms. What is your opinion?
Yes, I'm really concerned about that. We've noticed it here at the farm that the weather seems more extreme, particularly over the last 2 decades. I don't know if it is climate change and human influence having an impact, or whether it's just a normal transition, because obviously 10,000 years ago we had the Ice Age here and there wasn't the human influence at that point. So climate has always been on the wobble a bit, if you like, but because we've got the Atlantic Ocean on our western flanks and a large expanse of water to get across to the United States, if that warms just a tiny bit, then there'll be more evaporation from that huge water surface area, and we will have more events like we've had this last winter, where you have huge amounts of water depositing themselves on the first landmass that you reach coming from the west. So it concerns me hugely as a farmer and trying to grow crops, because the farm here at the moment this year is absolutely waterlogged, and so climate has a huge impact on the everyday farm to farm life that we have here.
Chris, the sound of some of your favourite birds.
Matthew, it's one of the success stories for conservation at High Ash Farm. The house sparrows, one of those red list species, declined by 50% or more, and we have over 100 here. It's a huge smile on my face.
Chattering sparrows, just one of the sounds that you can hear on the High Ash Farm podcast. But we need a favour.
Yes, we do. We're asking for donations and any help that you can give to help keep the podcast going.
You can make a monthly or just a one-off payment. highashfarm.com/podcast.
Well done, Matthew.
Julie listens without fail every Sunday morning with her husband, only a few miles from here, at Wyndham, south of Norwich. And they've visited High Ash Farm several times and can picture the areas you talk about. We absolutely love what you're doing for nature. And they said your voice arrives before you do, so you must have been...
Yes, we bumped into each other, and I was having a discussion with somebody, and Julie suddenly realised who it was. I've reached fame locally, and she got so excited and gave me a big hug. Thank you very much, and wished me well for my future operation.
Gillian Handyside has emailed a swift question. Now, will it be about swifts, I wonder? Thanks to Sunday's episode, I've now found my first hazel flowers. Tiny, beautiful, so easy to miss if you don't know that they're there. But I have a question about migration, particularly in relation to birds such as swifts. I've heard naturalists say birds migrate to follow the food, but is there a bit more to it than that? I can see why a bird like a Brent goose nests on the Arctic tundra and would move south in winter for food when the tundra is frozen and migrate back north in the spring. But what would motivate swifts to fly all the way back from equatorial Africa to the UK in summer when there must be a plentiful supply of insects in the air all the year round in the Congo Basin?
Yes, and the Congo Basin is where swifts spend our winter, and they migrate upwards, usually arriving in the UK about mid-May. It's quite a short breeding period here, and the question is, why do they do that? Now, well, the first bit of the answer is it's not an effort for the swifts to fly up here, because they're flying 24/7 anyway, the most aerial bird in the world. Now, back home in the Congo, there are other bird species that compete for nesting space, for food as well. And so the swifts, they're absolutely not stupid birds at all. Very, very clever. They'll make that migration and come to the UK for the short summer period, May, June and July. And generally, once you get to August, they've gone back to South Africa, or central South Africa, I should say. And so the food supply up here is very good. Nesting is also important. Back home, they can nest in cliffs, holes, and even small caves and places like that. But here we've got buildings galore, particularly around the eastern coast of the UK here, where we have a fair number. And some of the local wildlife groups, in particular Suffolk Wildlife Trust, locally, only about 25-30 miles away, a small town called Aldeburgh, have put up masses of swift boxes, and many of those are occupied. In fact, they have a kind of swift celebration, arrival day at Aldeburgh, and celebrate the one of the world's most aerial birds. Some dogs are just walking past, and Rat has just let us know that two very large poodles going past.
I think there is a proposal for all new build houses and all sorts of buildings to always, as a default, have a swift box in the roof.
Yes, and in some habitats that will work. Swifts will use new buildings to nest in if their habitat is right. Some people can put in swift bricks in actually just under the soffit, so the swifts can actually get in there. It's a brick that replaces one of the normal bricks, and they can get in. You can also use bat bricks for a similar thing. Things like pipistrelles will surprisingly use new houses for their maternity roosts. So it is possible. So much more wildlife friendly behaviour, particularly if the habitat around a town where swifts will nest in is like marshland or wetlands where there's a good supply of insects in the summer months. It's a really good suitable spot, and it's nothing more thrilling than actually having swifts nesting next to your house when you realise that once the young leave the nest, they probably won't touch anything solid for 2, maybe even 3 years. It's just extraordinary. So swifts will come up here because it works for them. As the short answer. They can breed, they rear their young, and then they go back again. And the young swifts are equipped with some sort of navigation system that we don't fully understand yet. It might be partially to do with the Earth's magnetism, partially as well the angle of the sun and the stars, because they're flying 24/7. So remember, they're flying at night as well, which is extraordinary. So
it really is one of the wonders of nature.
Yes.
And they'll be here in May.
Yes, mid-May, and we have them at the farm here. Every year, apart from 2025, we've had massive swarms of them, sometimes 2,000 or 3,000 swifts, which is a sight to behold. When
Not last year, though.
No, they were virtually absent. The sort of prolonged dry weather meant there was a lack of insects, and although it had grown the crops to attract pollen beetles, things like mustard and fodder radish, which the little black beetles burrow into the base of the plant and steal the pollen. And then they actually swarm off the crop, and the swifts seem to know when that happens. And this is the first year. We only had a few hundred flying about on just a few days as well, and the rest of the time they were completely absent from the farm here. So it's quite a shock. So Gillian, thank you very much for that question, but it is much more complicated than either just food or just ability to nest, and there's a lot more sort of reasons behind migration that we still today, with our good understanding of nature, we've still got more to learn.
And Stephen in Norwich was enjoying our chat about badgers and why there's the phrase, I think you asked this, didn't you?
Yes.
Why is there the phrase bald as a badger? Well, Stephen says, I don't know for sure, but I very much suspect it's from the same source as bald eagles. The eagle, like the badger, is very much not bald, but is black and white. Another word for black and white is piebald. I suspect that over time the pie got dropped, leaving just the word bald.
I really like that explanation. Of all the 3 or 4 various explanations that we've had, I think that's perhaps the most sensible one, because we've got lots of horses at the farm here. Some are brown and white, we call those skewbald, and the black and white ones piebald, and just drop the pie off the middle and then you've got bald as a badger, which is a good explanation of that big white stripe down the centre of the head and then the black each side, or very dark grey. Lovely explanation. I think there's no right and wrong answer as to how it happened, bald as a badger, but I think that one top trumps the others.
Yeah, thanks very much for all the emails and letters and cards this week. We really enjoy receiving them. And thanks for the support for the donations as well for the High Ash Farm podcast, which keeps the whole show on the road. Chris, I can't wait for next week,
yes,
when it'll just be into March.
Yes, yeah, we're cruising up at the end of February already. February's a short month, and then we're already noticed the nights what we call pulling out in the evening, and it's lovely and still daylight at about 5 p.m. And 2 or 3 weeks ago it was black, very depressing. So it's time to get the spirits lifted up. If you have time, come out into the countryside wherever you are and just enjoy nature, and it kind of does what it should do. It lifts you and puts you back in touch with the real pace of life.